know most of you by name, but in case you don't, my name is Genevieve Williams. I'm running for U.S. Congress. I'm running for U.S. Congress for a lot of reasons, but one of those is party building. I think it's imperative that we win the state elections, even when we can't always focus on some of our local elections because they're not even being run for. We can never change that if we don't put in the work that it takes. And we will never hold those statewide elections for Kansas City, St. Louis, and kind of the I-70 corridor if we don't do the work that it takes to lose at least by narrow margins. So I will make it pretty short, but I want to talk to you a little bit about the work that we're about to send you out to do. You're going to be calling people at their homes, knocking on doors, and some of those individuals will, most of them will be polite, I will say that. I've done a lot of door knocking. It's usually a pretty positive experience. But some of them will ask you, why are you doing this? You're clearly the minority opinion at the polls a lot of times here in the 7th, especially here in Joplin, and I want you to tell them this. The people that we're currently sending, Roy Blunt and Billy Long, to Washington, D.C., are not our representatives. They're the representatives of people like Charles and David Koch, Rex Singfield, and David Humphreys, and they are never going to vote for us. So why, with our silence and our inaction, would we be voting for them? I want to also ask you, who has plans this weekend? Cancel them. Okay. This is the last weekend that we have until one of the most momentous elections in Missouri history is upon us. And a week from, not too long from right now, those polls will be closing. And our regrets will mean nothing. And I really, really strongly encourage you, if it is not of religious or familial significance, that you reschedule that for next weekend and focus every single ounce of energy and time that you have on winning this senatorial election. And with that, I will introduce to you your next senator from the great state of Missouri, Jason Kander.
Let's thank Jen also for all the work. Can we thank our hosts? I've been here a lot during this campaign, and I've never been here, and this is a really cool space, so can we thank them for opening? So, this has been kind of a long campaign. I don't know if you feel that way. I mean, my son is 3 years old now. When this campaign started, he was not talking yet. Last night, I went trick-or-treating with the kid who at the beginning of this campaign was not talking, and he was dressed as his favorite minion, which is Kevin, which was interesting because we ran into other kids dressed as minions, and there was like an argument that ensued as to who was which minion. Because at 3, like they couldn't figure out like that multiple kids were dressed similarly. It was interesting. And we get to a door, people were handing him candy. There's a kid who didn't talk at the beginning of this race, and he turns to me after the 3rd door of people giving him candy, and he says, "Daddy, this is crazy. Halloween is crazy." I thought, what an astute observation. Anyway, so this has been a long race, right? I mean, that little guy wasn't talking at the beginning of this thing, and now he's got a favorite minion. And so we put in a lot of work. You've put in a lot of work. And the reason that you're doing it is because you look at your Congress and you see a Congress that's totally gridlocked, and then what's worse than that, and what ultimately got me into this race and what got you here, is that you see a national conversation that looks too much like the Congress in the sense that it's gridlocked and that people can't seem to break through the barriers and talk to one another. And that bothers me. It bothers all of us. It's why, as you've heard me say before, we've come to this point where we have this feeling that you can sort of summarize as, what if this is permanent? That's the question we're asking ourselves. And then for folks of my generation who have only seen, many of them, one version of American politics and they're frustrated with it, instead of saying, what if this is permanent, they might be saying, I guess this is what it is, and there's a sense of resignation there. And I just don't have the ability to sit back and say that that's okay, you know? It's Collins, right? Lance Corporal Collins, right? Yes, we were talking a few minutes ago, Marine Reserves. And he keeps calling me sir. I keep telling him he doesn't have to. That's okay. That's what happens when you're a Marine Lance Corporal. And we were talking about the fact that, you know, he's still doing it and I'm not. And so when I think about that, and I look at a generation that feels that discouraged, I look at generations going up the line who are worried about where our country's going and where our national conversation's going, it's just impossible for me to sit back and say somebody else will take care of it. And you're here, and the reason you're going to knock on doors and make phone calls in the next 7 days is because you feel the same way. It's because you know that 7 days of hard work is nothing after everything that you've already put in. You're here because you care about the middle class, because you recognize that college has to be affordable or middle class families are going to struggle under that debt for generations. Raise your hand if your current financial situation is affected by the student loans of somebody in your family, child, grandchild. Keep them up and look around. There's an awful lot of folks raising their hand who don't, no offense, look to be college age. Thanks. They're telling you the truth. That's what's important about that point, right? Is that Senator Blunt, I think, really believes that this is something that only affects people between the ages of 18 and 25. Doesn't understand that it's a bedrock middle-class economic issue. Doesn't understand that there are grandparents in this state who have suspended their retirement to help a grandchild pay for school. There are parents who have put off their retirement in order to help their child pay for school. There are parents right now who have kids who are high school age who they're dreading the conversation about them talking about college because they've still got their own student loans and they're worried about how they're going to pay for their kids to go to school. I met people in Joplin who fit that criteria in one family from one set of student loans. That's what's going on for the middle class in this country. It's why we got to make sure that folks can refinance their loans like an auto or a home loan. It's why we got to make sure that we kept that interest rate so that people have a chance. Senator Blunt doesn't understand that. Senator Blunt says that the reason folks graduate with debt is because of their lifestyle during college. As if it's the extra bowl of ramen in the microwave that is causing that to happen. So we need people who understand that. We need people who understand that the middle class needs a tax cut more than a multinational corporation needs another tax loophole. We need people who understand that it is wrong when women are paid less than men for doing the exact same job. Don't we?
Yes.
We do. That's what we need. That's why you're here. Because you understand that America's at its best when our middle class is at its strongest. And so over the next 7 days, which in the Army, and I bet they say the same thing in the Marines, it ain't 7 days, it's 6 days and a wake up, right? You can do 6 days and a wake up, right? What I need from you over that time is I need you to knock on doors and I need you to make phone calls. Because Senator Blunt has, and you've seen it on TV, no shortage of special interests that are backing him. And that's because over the last 20 years, they have made an investment in Senator Blunt. And I use the term investment on purpose. Because they have invested in somebody who wakes up every morning in Washington thinking about what he can do for special interests and the ones that fund his campaign and his lifestyle. But we have something totally different. He's got the special interests, and he can have them, because I have you. I have people to knock on doors and to make phone calls and win this race. This race is deadlock tied, and it is going to come down to who works the hardest. And I look out at a room like this, and I know that we have the advantage. So will you do that? Will you work for me over the next 7 days?
Yeah.
Yes.
Here's the good news. The good news is that there really is a new generation that's stepping forward in the country right now. And I can just tell you that I am not going to be distracted by this dark choir of politicians that still tell us that our country is doomed and that this generation is incapable of greatness. I won't. Lance Corporal Collins, do you remember the date that you enlisted?
Yes, sir.
When was it?
July 14, 2014.
And what year were you born?
Here in Joplin, Missouri, sir.
What year?
1994, August 6th.
Okay, so a millennial, right? This is the generation that these folks in Washington say is incapable of greatness. So you enlisted in 14, which means that's a pretty long time after 9/11. You knew what you were getting into.
Yes, sir.
Right? So I'm real tired of people telling me that this generation is incapable of greatness, because I have known too many folks and served with too many folks who knew what it meant to sign on that dotted line, and they're part of this generation, and they did it. I just have no tolerance for that at this point. This idea that this generation can't do big things. They're doing big things all the time. I promise you, basic training felt like a pretty big thing, didn't it?
Yes, sir.
And 1 week in a month is still feeling pretty big to you, right? Okay,
Yes, sir.
it's a big thing. This generation is capable of big things, and I reject the folks who say otherwise. And the reason that they're capable of it is because this generation is a lot more focused on ideas than ideology. And we don't measure people's patriotism by their eagerness to send folks like him to war. We measure it by their willingness to do what's right, even if it's not good for them politically. That's how we measure it. And I'll just tell you that I think what we need are more people in Washington who have voluntarily been through something in their life that is more difficult than a re-election campaign. And we're not going to change Washington until we change the people we send there. So the time has come for that next generation to step up and take the lead in shaping the direction of our state and of our country. And with your help over the next 7 days, I promise that is what I'm going to do as your United States Senator for 6 years. Thank you so much.